Did you know that about 75% of people believe that they're not living up to their full creative potential? Have you by chance wanted to go to art school, but due to insane tuition fees or that path just not seeming practical enough, you drifted away from doing so? Well, don't worry, even art school graduates like myself can fall victim to the corporate trap and temporarily lose their way. But the creative world is always calling. So, what do you think? Maybe it's time to answer. Welcome to Art School 101, a series where we'll be going through 101 core principles of art making, which a professor of painting at Pratt Institute conveniently summarized for us in this book. Each episode we will decipher one concept, create an art piece around it, and discuss a little bit of art history to give you a well-rounded overview of the idea. So how about you grab your pencil, accidentally scribble over the subscribe button so that you don't miss the next lesson, and start taking notes. Art can be anything. It is not defined by medium or the means of its production, but by a collective sense that it belongs to a category of experience we have come to know as art. If we try to decipher that a little bit and speak in normal language, it just simply means that art can go beyond the conventional forms such as painting and sculpture that you might think of immediately, and instead encompass everyday objects, actions, and ideas. The image you see here on the left is Marcel Duchamp's fountain from 1917 that is a suitable example for this principle. Maybe you are not a fan of the work, but at least some people in the 21st century accept it as art. And to be honest, we've come to see bananas taped to walls, so it's not as easy to face us at this point. In the 20th century though, this was not the case at all, and people obliterated the work. And I can imagine maybe you align also with some critics of the time who said that this work was vulgar, immoral, and to be honest, just a plain piece of plumbing. However, this work actually challenged the notions of the time of what could be considered art, and instead it showed that the artistic choice, the choice of an artist to put this into a gallery, this everyday basic object, suddenly transforms what the object actually tries to convey. Its utilitarian purpose is gone, it's no longer a urinal that you can actually use, it's flipped upside down, it's signed like an art piece, and the context of where it's displayed is completely different. So it forces you as a viewer to look at it as a piece of art instead of a typical utilitarian piece of equipment. This is what was so revolutionary about it, and that's one of the core essences of modern art. A similar approach is visible in Andy Warhol's Brillo boxes from 1964, where he replicated commercial packaging, blurring the lines between art and consumer product. This work raised questions about originality, authorship, and definition of art, and it came at a historical moment of economic boom and consumerism. Also at that time, art started to become part of commercial, industrial, and advertising systems as well. Brillo box raises questions about how we identify and value something as art, and about the commercial mechanism of an art object. We'll have one more example from art history, which is my favorite out of all of these, but before we get into it, I think it's time to start a project for this principle.
This project started with my trip to Valencia. I'd been visiting it multiple times over the past 2 years and noticed a pattern that every single time I was outside on the street, I was taking pictures of the street tile. Everything looked so chaotic to me. It looked like a giant patchwork of mishmash tile, which seemingly had no logical start and end to it. So it looked like the encompassing factor of the chaos of the city. So I started looking into that, isolating little bits and pieces of that tile, which I started then sketching out and trying out in crochet, because that was the technique I wanted to play around with for this project. And because I was trying to add some conceptual factor to it, I didn't just want to use the tile and recreate it one-to-one. I found a paper that was explaining how chaos theory is visualized, and it turned out similar to an infinity symbol, which was recreating in itself and repeating multiple times. So highlighted different words that I found would be potentially significant for the research of my project. Started with a mind map, tried to look into what else could I source from the chaos theory, did isolate a few examples, sketched out a few options that I thought might be interesting, tested a few mini samples of that crochet idea, playing with different techniques that I hadn't before, like these three-dimensional little bombs, and then started applying it already. So this is a sleeve, a perfect visualization of what I was going for, which is this tile example. I crocheted like a long version of it, trying to break it down. So if you can look to it one-to-one, this is that manhole cover that you're looking into here. These tiles are isolated into this area. Because there is a picture of this perspective, even though it's the same tile, it looks to minimize itself and look smaller. So I tried to make that visualization here as well. And then these horizontal long sausage tiles I also replicated here. And then because of that infinity symbol looping around, I just took that piece and wrapped it around my arm, which I was then hand stitching together. And that's how I ended up with this. So I had my two sleeves ready, I tried them on different ways around and figured out which ways I liked more, so I highlighted that for myself as well to not forget when I eventually got to attaching the sweater together. And then for the sake of coming up with the main body portion, I had already enough pictures of those styles everywhere, so I just tried to sketch it around the already existing sample. So I liked the neck area, how it was drooping around it, so I started collaging and sketching on top of my picture of the mannequin, and that was helping me to decide which direction I would take the whole piece as well. This was just a random texture texture page, I flattened the image into one acrylic color so that it would be easier for me to decipher what other elements I would be interested in. This looked kind of intriguing, but to be honest, this page is more so for the vibes rather than for actual usage. And then I started breaking down also the manhole covers that I wanted to create alongside with the text as well, which you will see on the back of the sweater. That is not a hugely significant or hugely deep concept for this project. It's very direct, it's just two different ideas mashed together, but it might offer you a good starting point for something.
Last example is Yoko Ono's cut piece from 1964, which is a performance art piece where Ono sat on stage and invited the audience to come and cut pieces of her clothing off. This work explores themes of vulnerability, participation, and the relationship between the artist and the audience. As she sits on the floor, the audience approaches her with scissors, cutting away her clothing until she is completely bare. This is a powerful performance art piece which shifts focus from the artist to the audience as they partake in exposing her body. Cut piece can be seen as a commentary on the objectification and exploration of women's bodies. By giving the audience the power to disrobe her, Ono highlights issues of control, aggression, and the passive role often assigned to women in society. This is an incredible piece in my opinion, which shows you again how to widen the scope of understanding what art actually is. For the longest period of time, I personally also didn't understand performance art pieces, but the whole point of them is the act that is happening. So video as the outcome of it is usually the medium that keeps that piece alive, because typically, let's say you take a mountain of sand and you throw it around, and that's your performance art piece with some logic and idea assigned to it. Maybe each sand grain represents something, but the action of throwing it and recording it live to also see what the process looked like is the art piece in itself. So it is the moment in time that is being captured. Similarly to how photography is also art, right? You're capturing the moment, which will never be reproduced again, no matter how you try. It's never going to be the same. So that's what is exciting about this as well. What matters is that an artist decided that it's the piece of art, and that's pretty much it. So I think in essence that's also quite liberating for yourself. Whatever you choose to do can be considered art as long as the collective understands that piece of art. It can be the process of cutting off clothing, it can be a urinal that is placed upside down into a museum floor, it can be packaging material that's been recreated, taken out of its original context from a grocery store shelf. It can be anything. I guess my takeaway here for you to maybe as a learning lesson or as homework if you wish, is to be open-minded, to go to modern art museums and actually read into what the artist was trying to say with this piece. Before you start reading into what the artist was trying to do, try to decipher the meaning yourself. Look at that random object, look at that random piece of art, and try to analyze it. What do you see there? Because it doesn't necessarily even matter all the time what the artist was trying to say. Maybe it's controversial, I'm not sure. But try to decipher what you think, read into what the artist was thinking, maybe discuss it with a couple of friends what they see it as. Art is what you choose it to be. You interpret it through your own perspective, through your own experiences, and you assign meaning to it yourself. So by going through museums, you develop your train of thought, your creative thinking, and you absorb also what the artist was trying to say to maybe help widen your perspective there as well. Since you're a really good student who decided to stay up until the last minutes of our first lecture, thank you so much. You might be interested in checking out this video where I explained in detail how I compose my sketchbooks for thought process, for creativity. So go check it out and see you in the next lesson. Bye.